Well, let's just get right into it then, Shane. The only matchup we got on Thursday, Mississippi State at Ole Miss, number 20 in the country. Them Rebels, Shane, favored by 2 points at home. Game kicks off at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central on ESPN. The over-under, 61 total points. Who's going home with the Egg Bowl this year, Shane?
Oh, who's going home after this game, Mike? I mean, where's home these days? You ask. So I think I think the news, and you always the noise. We've been talking about it all week with Lane Kiffin. He's out. He's done. This is a done deal. And then all of a sudden we get kind of roped back in. Well, maybe he gives it one more go around. But Mike, I don't know. The more time that this thing stews, the more time I think that Lane Kiffin is already 1 foot out the door. And I hate to say that, Ole Miss fans, coming up on the Egg Bowl here. I know you'd love to keep him around forever, but I just got a feeling this may be the last game we see Lane Kiffin coaching at Ole Miss. Yeah. And I think that catches up. He gets out here, he talks about, well, my last game with FAU, blah, blah, blah. That's a bowl game, whatever. Against some loser's team. That's I don't even know who they faced, and it doesn't even matter. It's not worth looking up the stat. But this game is a little bit different because both these teams are coming to play. Nobody's opting out for this game. This is a lot on the line. This is a huge game for recruiting. This is a huge game for just the state of Mississippi, bragging rights all year long. These guys hate each other. You're not going to see Lane Kiffin and the Pirate fist fighting on the sidelines, but there's a good shot you may see some of the players doing it. Why? Because, again, something I mentioned earlier in the season, there is almost 100 kids between these two rosters from the state of Mississippi. This is a big, big game. And going into a game like this, it's the little things that I think becomes a factor. Lane Kiffin not fully committed to Ole Miss is a factor. You got kids out here tweeting, texting, Snapchatting, talking about, what's going on behind. They're not focused as much on this game as I think Mississippi State is, because I think the Pirate, something you talked about earlier in the week, is fighting for his job. And I think there's been a little bit of a shakeup in the locker room, a little bit of growing pains. You've seen that throughout the season here, but as of late, I feel like Mississippi State is back on track. It starts with Will Rogers. It ends with the Pirate, and I think that's why I've got them winning the Egg Bowl. Brother, it's going to be a game. Don't get me wrong. I think it's going to be a tight football game, but I just think Mississippi State jumps out early and is able to secure the lead. And just similar to Arkansas, I don't think Ole Miss gets back in it till late. So give me Mississippi State 35, Ole Miss 21.
Oh man, blowout kind of touchdown game.
I think honestly, Mike, it feels like it's going to be one of those games that Mississippi State just goes out early. 28-0, 21-0, something like that. And I think Ole Miss gets back into it, but you just can't do it with the arm of Dart. It's going to require more than that. It's going to require more than this fantastic running game that Ole Miss has. And I just think Mississippi State plays their best game of the year. And just they have to, Mike. They have to for the coach.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they have to win this ball game, Shane. So much going into it. I mean, we're sitting here talking about all the disappointment potentially of Lane Kiffin leaving. Mm-hmm. This is going to be massive, massive disappointment in Starkville if this team, with the most experienced roster in the SEC, Will Rogers, the most prolific passer, if you just want to talk statistics, in the SEC, yet we go 7-5. I mean, that would be basically unacceptable.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying you sit around and you fire Mike Leach, because I think he's a really good coach, but we got to be honest. We tell it like we see it. That would be a major disappointment and a bad coaching job this season. So, hey, everything you said is true. Pressure to win this ball game, pressure to bring the Egg Bowl home. If you can't beat Lane Kiffin with, as Cousin Shane puts it, he's got 1 foot out the door. His I would imagine, Shane, if we had a camera on Lane Kiffin's house, there's probably nothing inside of it because it's all in the moving van. They've already gotten that far with it. If you can't beat this Ole Miss team, you ain't gonna ever beat Lane Kiffin. And guess what, Shane? It ain't happening this week. Give me Ole Miss 30, Mississippi State 27. I understand the big narrative going in. I mean, you can't not talk about Lane Kiffin. He's like the talk of college football right now. But if at all possible to move on from that, I think Ole Miss is a much better team, and they've played much better for the vast majority of the season. Now, they've lost, yes, to LSU and Alabama and Arkansas, but guess what? Mississippi State's lost to 2 of those 3, and the only one they beat was Arkansas without KJ Jefferson. So, I'm not saying that I only got it as a 3-point ball game. I'm not saying they can't compete, but given it at home, Lane Kiffin always wins his final game. He said it himself, Shade. So if this is his last game, I like for him to go out on top. I really think it comes down to, can Mississippi State, which has a number 87 rush defense efficiency in the country, can they slow down Ole Miss on the ground? I don't think they can do it. At least not all game long. That's why I think Jackson Dart has himself a big day. He's been running it right there with Judkins and Evans. So I think all of them go over 100 yards on the ground. And I think Will Rogers, I think he has a ton of success against this Ole Miss defense. So like I was saying, back and forth. Could be last team with the ball wins the game, but I think it's going to be Ole Miss with the home field advantage, with playing their hearts out for their coach. Either that, or you could be dead right. Mississippi State blows them out the water because they find out Kiffin is 1 foot out the door. But I can't wait to see it. Could go either way.
It could go either way. And if you talk to me long enough, I could be convinced that Ole Miss wins this thing. But I'm not convinced we're getting the best Ole Miss anymore. They lost 3 out of the last 4 games.
Yeah.
Hell, even Texas A&M gave them a run for their money. So I'm just not convinced that, like I said, that this is what we signed up for week 1. So, coaches on the way out. I mean, there's just there's that narrative. That's that fight or flight. Yeah. And, it really is going to matter what happens in that locker room, not what Lane Kiffin says. No magical words are gonna prevail here. But if there was enough senior leadership this week to rally the troops, maybe even a players only meeting or something, like, whatever. If Lane's gone, he's gone. We're gonna be here together. We're gonna build something. We're gonna close this season strong. I'm just not convinced that those pieces are in that locker room. So that's why I'm going to take Mississippi State.